Full of adrenaline, and they didn't like rules and regulations, and it just was a pleasure to work with them. I knew how to handle them.
Black Sheep Squadron was more than just dogfights and daring missions. It was a battlefield behind the scenes, too. While the show flew under the radar for many, the cast held on to secrets that never made it into the scripts. Some moments were spontaneous, others carefully hidden, and one shocking detail in the final episode still leaves fans stunned.
My plane won't fly. You got other planes. I think you got no guts, Boynton.
What role did a chart-topping rock star play? Why was a real war hero in disguise? The answers aren't obvious, but they're unforgettable.
We were so deeply involved in it. I wasn't aware. Were you, Bob?
I was drunk. As you know.
We were trying to survive, really. He says it. He wasn't drunk. He was Fridays.
These aren't recycled facts. They're the kind of reveals that change how you see the show entirely. Robert Conrad, dead at age 84. Robert Conrad, the star of Black Sheep Squadron and one of television's most enduring tough guys, passed away on February 8, 2020, at the age of 84. His death, caused by heart failure at his home in Malibu, California, marked the end of a remarkable era in American TV history. Known for his rugged charm, self-assured presence, and willingness to do his own stunts, Conrad built a career around action, adventure, and characters who lived on the edge. While many viewers remember him most vividly as Colonel Greg "Pappy" Boyington, the charismatic World War II fighter pilot in Black Sheep Squadron, his impact on the industry extended well beyond that role. Conrad's rise to fame began in the late 1950s with the detective series Hawaiian Eye, where his striking looks and athletic build quickly made him a favorite among audiences. But it was his starring role as Secret Service agent James T. West in The Wild Wild West, 1965 to 1969, that cemented his status as a television icon. The show, which mixed westerns with spy fiction, allowed Conrad to blend action and charisma in a way that few other actors of the time could manage. His willingness to perform his own stunts, often at great personal risk, added to his mystique and gave his characters a believable edge. Some even speculate that this physical commitment helped set a standard for later action stars. However, between the 70s and the 80s, Conrad broke into steady success on television. Apart from the series Black Sheep Squadron, featured on television, he produced TV movies and personal projects such as High Mountain Rangers, where several of his kids participated as cast and crew. This put into perspective Conrad's deadly loyalty, both on and off the screen. Known for his willful nature, argumentative at times, and downright nasty at times, he had a reputation as inflexible. Did that make him attractive? Did audiences believe there was a real McCoy behind the ostentation? Probably, though, that will no doubt affect the continued popularity beyond that particular heyday. When Robert Conrad died, tributes rolled in from fans and former co-stars who praised not only the work but also the intensity he exhibited day after day. He left behind 8 children and 18 grandchildren, as well as a long list of performances that helped define an era for American television. Climbs train cars in the Wild Wild West to command a squadron in the South Pacific, not as easy as it looks or sounds. Such was Conrad, the action hero type who didn't just pretend tough, he lived it. He may have stopped writing on paper, but his name will always be remembered when it comes to classic TV. If you thought this was shocking, the next one will blow your mind. Real Pappy portrayed show's general. One of the most surprising facts about Black Sheep Squadron is that its real-life inspiration, Colonel Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, actually appeared on the show himself. Known as one of the most decorated and daring Marine Corps fighter pilots of World War II, Boyington's exploits formed the backbone of the series. Yet beyond inspiring the character of Pappy, played by Robert Conrad, Boyington made 3 on-screen appearances as General Harrison Kenley, a fictional character, but one that gave the legendary pilot a unique opportunity to act in the dramatization of his own life. His first appearance was in the 2-part episode The Deadliest Enemy of All, followed by another cameo in a newsreel segment where his character pins a medal on Conrad's Pappy in The Fastest Gun. These appearances are a rare instance of a real war hero playing a role, albeit a different one, in a Hollywood production based on his own military service. It's an unusual convergence of biography and entertainment. While Boyington did not play himself, fans were undoubtedly thrilled to see the real man behind the legend take part in the series. It added a layer of authenticity and a nod to viewers who were familiar with his status as a Marine Corps ace, with 28 confirmed aerial victories. His presence served as both an endorsement and a reminder that behind the TV dramatization was a very real and dangerous chapter in American history. Boyington's involvement with the series was more than just a novelty. It demonstrated a certain openness on the part of the show's creators to honor the man whose story they were telling, despite the liberties taken with other characters and events. While the show itself was known to fictionalize much of the Black Sheep Squadron for dramatic effect, most of the pilots, island setting, and personal dynamics were invented. The inclusion of Boyington brought a kind of grounded truth to an otherwise Hollywood-stylized war series. Was his participation a quiet critique or a wholehearted endorsement of the way his story was being told? That remains open to interpretation, but his repeated appearances suggest he at least appreciated the visibility the show gave to the real VMF 214. Speculation has long circulated about how Boyington felt about Robert Conrad's portrayal. Did he see himself in the rough-edged, womanizing, heavy-drinking version of Pappy that appeared on screen? While interviews from the time indicate he was generally supportive of the series, Boyington was known to be outspoken and unfiltered, traits that made him a hero in war and a controversial figure in peace. His acting role in Black Sheep Squadron stands as a rare and poignant instance where a man who made history stepped into the fiction inspired by it. Cast member mourned Elvis's death. Among the many memorable cast members of Black Sheep Squadron, few had a backstory as compelling as Red West. Known on the show as Master Sergeant Andy Micklin, the tough-talking, cigar-chomping mechanic, West brought an authentic ruggedness to the role. But off-screen, he carried a far more personal and poignant history, one tied to one of the most legendary figures in American music, Elvis Presley. Long before his time in television, Red West was a close friend, confidant, and even bodyguard to Elvis. Their relationship dated back to high school, where they first met in Memphis. Over the years, West became an integral part of Elvis's inner circle, writing songs, acting as a stuntman, and later becoming one of the most visible members of the so-called Memphis Mafia. This deep connection made August 16, 1977, a particularly emotional day for West. That was the day Elvis Presley died unexpectedly at the age of 42. West, who was filming Black Sheep Squadron at the time, reportedly had to step away from the set to grieve. According to various accounts, the loss hit him hard, unsurprisingly, considering the long and often complicated relationship he shared with the King. Though their friendship had fractured in the mid-1970s, with West being fired from Elvis's entourage in 1976, there remained a lingering emotional bond. The severing of their personal and professional ties didn't erase decades of memories, loyalty, and shared history. Official reports affirm that West was indeed seen leaving the set after hearing of his friend's death. However, many questions remain unanswered. Was his grief a cause for unresolved conflict? Did he harbor any guilt or sorrow over their split? These questions would be known to West alone, and while he subsequently did give several interviews about Elvis and co-wrote Elvis. What happened? A controversial expose published only weeks prior to Elvis's death. On the day in question, his conflicting feelings must have run very deep. Most emotions were articulated in that tome, which was intended by West for a warning, a solemn meditation, and some viewed it as betrayal, while others termed it a case of concern. Whatever it might be, Presley must have been a bit hard for West to chew. After Black Sheep Squadron, Red West carved out an acting career with roles in features such as Roadhouse and Safe Haven, earning accolades for his most heartfelt, down-to-earth performances yet. But the bond with Elvis remained among the most crucial features in his life. Leaving the set to mourn was a break from shooting, but much more a reconciliation of an internal history with a public memory. Fans of both the show and the King will see how real life peaks just below the surface of entertainment. Conrad declined iconic pilot role. Before Robert Conrad took flight as the hard-nosed Marine pilot Greg "Pappy" Boyington in Black Sheep Squadron, he had already built a strong reputation as one of TV's most charismatic tough guys. Best known for his role as James T. West in The Wild Wild West, Conrad had a screen presence defined by physicality, confidence, and a no-nonsense persona. But in the mid-1960s, he was also offered a very different role, one that would go on to become an iconic part of television history. That role was U.S. Air Force Captain Tony Nelson in the classic sitcom I Dream of Jeannie. It's a little-known fact that Conrad was seriously considered for the part, but ultimately turned it down, a decision he would later admit he regretted. The reason for his rejection of the role? Billing order. According to Conrad, the sticking point was that he would have received second billing to co-star Barbara Eden, who played the titular Jeannie. At the time, Conrad believed he had reached a point in his career where he should be receiving top billing. Coming off several successful roles and known for his strong, assertive presence, he felt that taking a back seat in credits might signal a step backward professionally. But as I Dream of Jeannie went on to become a major success, running for 5 seasons and establishing Barbara Eden and Larry Hagman as household names, Conrad was left to wonder what might have been. Would the show have been the same with Robert Conrad as Tony Nelson? It's an interesting question. Conrad had the good looks and charm, but his performance was usually much more serious and authoritative compared to Larry Hagman's lighthearted, at times flustered, take on the role. The trademark Conrad intensity would most likely have changed the show. Was he capable of shifting that intensity to accommodate a more fun and comedic character? Or was the show going to change to accommodate him? Perhaps something in between is the answer. It is interesting to examine just how differently his career and the workings of the show might have gone. Conrad mentioned that it was one of his major career mistakes to pass on the role, although he would rarely dwell on missed opportunities. His subsequent work, namely in Black Sheep Squadron, earned him some kudos in his own light as a TV icon. But the story of passing on A Dream of Jeannie speaks to just how fine a line actors have to tread between ego, opportunity, and legacy. In the end, both shows would flourish with the leads they ended up with. But it makes you think how things would have been different had Robert Conrad been lying beside Jeannie instead of flying Corsairs in the Pacific. Conrad's reputation nearly lost role. Robert Conrad was a natural fit for the role of Colonel Greg "Pappy" Boyington in Black Sheep Squadron, or so it seemed. His chiseled features, rugged physicality, and long history of playing intense, action-oriented characters made him a leading candidate for the part. Not to mention, Conrad was already a household name thanks to his role as James T. West in The Wild Wild West, where he famously performed many of his own stunts. But despite his credentials, there was real hesitation behind the scenes about casting him in the lead role. Series creator Stephen J. Cannell, known for producing iconic action-driven shows like The A-Team and Hunter, reportedly had serious doubts about bringing Conrad on board because of his off-camera reputation. By the mid-1970s, Robert Conrad was as well known for his tough guy image off-screen as he was on it. While he maintained a professional attitude during filming, his behavior after hours painted a different picture. Conrad himself admitted in interviews that once the cameras stopped rolling, he would head to the bar across the street from the studio, and that's when things often got out of hand. He was involved in more than a few bar fights, incidents that became part of Hollywood lore. Though never accused of being unprofessional on set, the unpredictability of his off-duty conduct gave studio heads and producers like Cannell legitimate pause. Could they trust him to lead a major network production without incident? It's worth asking whether Conrad's off-camera bravado enhanced or hindered his career. On one side, this amplified his already larger-than-life character, a very much expected behavior from one who presented bold secret agents and World War II fighter pilots. But then again, it was intrinsically risky for anyone to advance him. The hiring studio would balk. Would his behavior leave them with lawsuits and bad press? Would it affect shooting schedules or working relationships? Cannell finally resolved to take the risk, but did not take the decision in haste. This would imply that even a star so consummate in his talent and experience might be shaken if so much of his private life interfered. Thank goodness for everyone. Conrad delivered a powerful performance as Pappy Boyington, cementing the presence of Black Sheep Squadron with grit and aggression. The blend of physicality and stunts and unyielding leadership lends the show a sense of realism and edge during production, uncommon on any show of its time. After the doubts early on, Conrad would prove to be a truly strong and steady presence through much of the show's run. But the tale of his near rejection remained a cautionary tale for Hollywood. Reputation holds the key to the door that talent opened. Keep your reputation radar on, because this next one is on another level. Conrad's Daughter, cast to compete. By the time Black Sheep Squadron entered its second season, the show faced stiff competition in the television landscape, most notably from Charlie's Angels, a cultural juggernaut that combined crime-fighting action with glamorous female leads. The ABC hit show quickly dominated ratings, appealing to a broad audience and shifting the expectations for primetime drama. In an effort to keep pace, the producers of Black Sheep Squadron made a bold pivot. For the final batch of episodes, they introduced a group of female characters, specifically a team of military nurses stationed on the island, intended to add a touch of glamour and expand the show's appeal. This new ensemble was informally dubbed Pappy's Lambs, a clear nod to the success of Charlie's Angels. Among the newly introduced nurses was Nancy Conrad, the real-life daughter of series star Robert Conrad. Casting Nancy was likely more than a simple act of nepotism. She had acting experience and had worked alongside her father in other television projects. Still, the timing of her addition, coinciding with a desperate ratings push, raised questions. Was her casting part of a broader strategy to inject youth and beauty into the show? Or did Robert Conrad use his influence to help his daughter break into a competitive industry while also serving the show's evolving needs. Whatever the motivation, Nancy's presence was emblematic of the series' shift toward a lighter, more visually appealing tone in its final episodes. It's reflected in a broader tendency of the 70s television networks to bring about such mid-season revamps or changes in tone, even in the case of a major cast overhaul. For a gritty 2-hour story located during World War II, which focused heavily on camaraderie, combat, and the morality concerning the gray areas of war, the inclusion of female characters was pretty different from what Black Sheep Squadron initially offered. Could this have put off the original audience for the show, or did it dilute the hard-edged authenticity that defined the first season? Such questions remain to be interpreted. However, it hardly survived for a long time after the second season. Even though the experiment itself was short-lived, the move to cast Pappy's lambs remains an interesting footnote to the history of the show. Nancy's part is thus an evident moment of family synergy on screen, but is also said to be a strategy for competing in a diversifying model of the television market. The Black Sheep Squadron did not measure up, however, to Charlie's Angels in the long run, and, unlike The Marrying Kind, managed to stand out with New Age storytelling and remind that not even war dramas are above the fray of primetime trends and the politics of networks. Two dogs played meatball. One of the most endearing elements of Black Sheep Squadron wasn't a pilot, a plane, or even a person. It was a bull terrier named Meatball. As the unofficial mascot of the VMF 214 Squadron, Meatball brought comic relief and heart to a show otherwise filled with high-stakes aerial combat and military tension. Always seen by Pappy Boyington's side, the lovable dog became a fan favorite, appearing in multiple episodes as a loyal companion. But few viewers at the time realized that this canine character was actually played by not one but two different dogs, each with a specific set of skills tailored to the demands of the production. The primary dog used in scenes alongside the actors handled the close-up moments and routine interactions. This version of Meatball needed to be calm, responsive to commands, and comfortable with the chaos of a busy set. But when the script called for more physical scenes, such as running through obstacles, reacting to sudden movements, or appearing in action-heavy sequences, a second dog stepped in. Named Bounty, this stunt double of sorts was trained for agility and specialized performance. According to later accounts, Bounty's owner took him in after he was written out of the show, speaking fondly of the dog's brief but notable Hollywood career. Yes, Black Sheep Squadron employed a stunt dog, a practice more common in the industry than most people realize. The decision to use two dogs was practical, but it also speaks to the level of detail and production care involved in the series. Animal actors are quite erratic, so considerable precautions were taken for the show that required pyrotechnics and moving aircraft while performing outdoors. Can one dog realistically be able to carry off emotionally charged scenes like action sequences without being unduly stressed or confused? Probably not. Thus, dividing the parts so as to keep the well-being of the animals while also keeping the shoot on schedule. It further throws an interesting query. Were the viewers ever able to differentiate between the two meatballs? There is no record at present of fans catching on, but the transition between the two dogs seems to suggest that the handlers did their work pretty well. In hindsight, Meatball's role was too surprisingly human to be entirely believable. He wasn't merely a prop and a gimmick, he belonged to the team. For many fans, his addition brightened an exclusively male and war narrative. And though his canine co-stars probably never got on-screen credits, their contribution to the charm of Black Sheep Squadron is unmistakable. The story of two dogs playing a single favorite role reminds us that even in a series about war, there is the possibility of a little heart thrown in. Zeros previously seen in Tora. The Japanese fighter planes featured in many of its dogfight sequences. Viewers may have noticed the menacing Mitsubishi A6M Zero aircraft used by the show's antagonists. But those familiar with warbirds and aviation history might be surprised to learn that these planes weren't authentic Zeros at all. Instead, they were actually North American T-6 Texan trainer aircraft, recycled from an earlier Hollywood production, the 1970 film Tora, modified with cosmetic changes to resemble Japanese fighters. These planes were repurposed for the television series, giving Black Sheep Squadron an affordable and practical way to portray aerial combat. The T-6 Texan was widely used as a training aircraft during World War II, and it bore a similar silhouette to the real Zeros when viewed from a distance or in fast-paced aerial shots. Hollywood technicians added rounded wingtips, extended cowling, and other superficial features to mimic the look of Japanese aircraft. This sort of visual trickery wasn't unusual in the era before CGI. Using the same aircraft from a prior film also lent a surprising visual continuity to war-themed media of the time. Perhaps for the connoisseur of aviation, that may have been so. It raises the point about how much the handcrafted walls and the often limited budget ruled the portrayal of history in front of the audience. Some fans may have even assumed they were genuine war jinkers, which would definitely add to the series' charm. Such incidents with the reused planes offer minor but meaningful demonstrations of how Hollywood war stories frequently stem from practicality. Modified for filming Black Sheep Squadron, the T-6 Texans allowed for real dogfights within a safe and budget-friendly parameter. They may not have been real Zeros, but they certainly carried history, having been in the theaters first in possibly the most honored war film of its time, and then making a second appearance in a beloved television series honoring the heroism of World War II pilots. The show's original title was different. When Black Sheep Squadron first aired on NBC in 1976, it wasn't originally known by that now familiar title. Instead, the series premiered under the name Ba Ba Black Sheep, a reference to both the famed World War II fighter squadron VMF 214 and the well-known children's nursery rhyme. The title was intended to evoke the idea of misfits, unruly but brilliant pilots who didn't quite fit the mold of traditional military discipline. It also aligned with the nickname of the real-life group led by Marine ace Greg "Pappy" Boyington. But while the title was thematically appropriate, it also created some confusion among viewers unfamiliar with its wartime origins. Was it a war show, a comedy, or something in between? When the show entered syndication, it was retitled Black Sheep Squadron, a change that made its military tone clearer and more direct. The new name removed the sing-song quality of the nursery rhyme reference, replacing it with something that sounded more authoritative and grounded. It aligned better with the show's focus on aerial combat, military camaraderie, and real-life historical inspiration. Was the title change simply a marketing decision, or was it also a creative choice? This is likely both. In syndication, clearness and genre recognition must be operative in the show introduction, more especially for viewers who have not followed such performances during the original broadcast. Ba Ba Black Sheep may have caught attention, but it may have undersold the show's action-driven war drama elements. There is also the possibility of NBC having placed the quirky title initially to reach a broader prime-time audience. After the core viewers were introduced to the show, it might then be effectively misused because of the new name for further definition of its serious yet occasionally lighthearted theme as a World War II series. Title changes take flight for our last pick. It will rock your expectations. Finale featured major 70s rock star. The final episode of Black Sheep Squadron featured a surprising guest star that few viewers expected: British rock legend Peter Frampton. Known for his signature blonde curls and soaring guitar solos, Frampton was one of the most recognizable figures in 1970s music. His 1976 live album, Frampton Comes Alive, was a cultural phenomenon, topping the Billboard charts and selling millions of copies worldwide. By the time Black Sheep Squadron aired its last episode, titled A Little Bit of England, Frampton had achieved near superstar status. Frampton played a fictional British character named Peter Buckley, appearing alongside the show's established cast. Despite his limited acting background, Frampton was reportedly enthusiastic about the role and wanted to contribute fully to the part, even offering to cut off his iconic curly hair to better match the look of a wartime soldier. In the end, the producers decided against the drastic haircut, likely realizing that Frampton's instantly recognizable image was part of the draw. His appearance was brief but memorable, and for fans of both the show and the musician, it was an unexpected crossover of pop culture and historical fiction. What led to Frampton's involvement with the series remains something of a mystery. He was just trying out something new as a rock star, or maybe it was a publicity stunt or a favor to a producer. Although Frampton had dabbled in acting before and would later make appearances as himself in sitcoms such as The Drew Carey Show and Madame Secretary, Black Sheep Squadron remained his only role in dramatic television as a fictional character. With ratings slipping away at the time, probably the producers were expecting that such press hype would create buzz for the series' finales. True or not, it left an impression, whatever happened with numbers. That was a rather different final note for Black Sheep Squadron, marrying just that tiny cross-section between a gritty military drama and one of the biggest music stars of the decade. Indeed, Frampton makes the finale memorable for fans, an unexpected brush with celebrity that adds that extra something to the show's tag. It's the kind of odd, delightful twist that sticks in your memory. For a show rooted in realism and camaraderie, ending with a rock star cameo felt like a wink to the audience. If you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes secrets from Black Sheep Squadron, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more untold TV history, and drop a comment with your favorite surprise from the show. Want more? Click the next video on your screen for another deep dive into classic television moments you never saw coming.